first of all, I want to thank all the sponsors of TADSummit Amir Americas for making this possible, because it's their cash that is bringing us all together. So that includes Telnix, STROLID, Ava Network, Automat Berlin, GoContact, Broadvoice, and Radisys. So thanks, guys, for stepping up and sponsoring and making this event possible. So we've got 2 live sessions, one today, one tomorrow. And today we're going to have the GoContact Keynote Panel Discussion. So it was going to be a presentation, but João is busy to say the least. So to help him out, we're making this a panel discussion. And then after the panel discussion, we'll then move on to the Radisys keynote, and I'll let them introduce themselves later. So for the panel, we have João, who's the CTO for Broadvoice GoContact. We have Shai, who's the CEO for Fonolo. We have Adnan, who's the CTO, Software and Cloud Solutions from Radisys. We have Al, who's the SVP, Communication Solutions at Radisys. We have Thomas Howe, who's the CTO of STROLID, and then myself. So we're going to kick off with the latest news. I have to get this one out of the way. So jump in, anyone who wants to comment on this from the panel. Okay, so yesterday we saw the Genesys investment of over $500 million at a valuation of $21 billion by Salesforce, Zoom, ServiceNow, and a number of other investors. I'm interested in people's view on that, quite large investment.
Yeah. So Alan, so I think it kind of reminds me, actually, from a strategy standpoint, of what happened in our industry right after the web, implosion, where there was a massive movement from vendors into open source, and service providing and using open source to block it. And I think this is a similar thing. ServiceNow, Salesforce, etc., is doing their best to neuter what there is going to be a really important piece of their ecosystem. That's why, and this is the basic reason why they're doing it, is to take that competition off the table as far as they're concerned.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah,
gotcha. Cool. Yeah, because there's a natural sort of fit between what Salesforce does and then what the call center does. It's sort of like the automation layer on top of the contact center. So this way it enables them to invest. Now, is it really neuter?
Yeah, it is. It is. They've turned an enemy into at least a frenemy.
Gotcha. Understood.
Yeah.
Interesting. Shai, what's your view?
Well, to be honest, I had not digested the news before the panel started. You caught me before. It's early here. So, I'm not surprised, because Genesys has been showing a lot of signs of strength lately, and I've been very impressed with their trajectory. They've also been very acquisitive. I think 2 acquisitions last month. Pointillist was one, and Exceed was the other. I think one is a virtual assistant type thing. One is a customer journey management. But they've been acquiring a lot of companies, and they digested the interactive intelligence acquisition. In hindsight, that seems like it was a really smart move, and got them caught up in terms of a proper cloud native contact center.
Yeah.
And they also have new leadership, right? They've got, I think, their CEOs from Microsoft. So a lot of pieces have changed in Genesys. This is not the Genesys from 5 years ago.
Yep.
And then today we got yet another twist to the story. So it's something exciting is happening over there.
Absolutely. Al or Adnan, any views?
I think, Alan, I just like I mentioned earlier, I also hadn't seen the news yet until this morning, but I think what catches people's attention is the size of the investments here and the scale of these. This is just one example. The Vonage acquisition a week or 2 ago. It demonstrates the value of these solutions, and at least kind of hints at synergies. I know we'll talk more about that, synergies and challenges, as we go through the course of this panel discussion. But I've heard a lot of skepticism about some of the evaluations of these deals over the past year.
Yeah.
But I think there's behind the scenes, there's a lot. It's a lot more about the execution, the size of these markets and the scale, the untapped potential. Still at least as of early this year or late last year, UC and contact center, cloud-based UC and contact center penetration is still around 50%.
Yes.
Right. So there's still a lot of runway here. So I kind of choose to focus on the upside here and the value, and it's consistent with what we're seeing as opportunities in the markets as well. Like, we don't provide the core UC or the core contact center capabilities, but a lot of the augmentation around it, and we're seeing this potential. So I think it hints at the opportunities for us as an industry moving forward.
Absolutely. And João, what's your view?
Well, it's funny that I think there's a new trend in investment as well, and of course these investors are competitors in somehow.
Yes.
But I see a trend emerging where maybe it's easier to inject this money into an already huge player as Genesys and let them do the acquiring and the consolidation, and establish a very strong market position. As you know, big companies are always trying to find room to be the only player in the market, right? And I think most of these dollars will actually go into further acquisitions, picking up smaller companies with newer tech and enabling side markets, let's say, and just expanding the scope of giving Genesys sales reps the ability to do upsell and cross-sell all day long, right? Gotcha. And that way they consolidate their position and create a market for themselves. So I think that's a new trend in investing, is that instead of picking smaller companies to bet on, we give the money to the large player and let them consolidate, right?
Yeah. No, I think that, when I saw that number, I was like, ooh, that's a big war chest for M&A. I think Shai highlighted rightly that it isn't the old Genesys. It's making the changes. They've shown, with their cloud-based services, thanks to the Interactive Intelligence acquisition, accounting, there's lies, damn lies in accounting, but, they're quoting like 100% growth rate around their cloud business, which I think, is relatively, is reasonable. So I think, the shift is happening. I think it's going to be interesting to see how quickly they spend that. If they're anything like Cinch, once the money is in the bank account, it's burning a hole, and they move within months. So it could be interesting to see what happens here. But anyway, that's beside the point of this panel. This panel is focused on the challenges and opportunities of merging UCaaS and CCaaS. Okay, so unified communications and customer communications. And this was going to be a presentation by João. He's busy, but we're great to have him on here. So the first question I had on this focus part of the panel discussion is, what's driving this consolidation across unified communication, sort of customer communication, and also we see with sort of a communication platform as a service, CPaaS as well. What's the customer need that's driving it? Not investor, market, all that stuff, but what from a customer perspective do you believe is driving it? And I'm going to go straight to you, João.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Well, it's kind of, I think that's the piece that needs the more information today, right? Because what I see happening, and I think this has become increasingly clear for me since I've joined forces with Broadvoice, is I come from a 10+ years of doing CCaaS, just doing enterprise BPOs, right, big stuff. And now I'm, leading a company where 99% of our business is SMB, right? And it's two different worlds, right? It's two different buying personas. Their needs are different. The way you do business is different. We at GoContact, the average turnaround for a project is like 8 months, right? And here we do hundreds of projects per month, and so it's a very different need. And I think it goes back to the realization that there's two different people buying software, right? One customer is buying, and it might be in the same company, right? One customer is buying a CCaaS solution because he's worried about customer experience and interacting across multiple channels. And this is usually a business driven person, right? It can be under marketing or under operations, sometimes even under sales. Now, I think in the last 5 years, you see more and more having a head of customer experience or customer satisfaction or support, whatever it is. So it's its own standalone thing. And then you have for UCaaS, most of this acquisition is still done by the IT department, right? So it's been driven by the IT department. I think some confusion is coming up, and I think COVID is accelerating this confusion, is where you are trying to see companies solving both internal collaboration needs and external collaboration needs with customers using the same solution, right? And you look at Microsoft Teams or Zoom or Slack has a strategy here as well, and most of them have been, maybe Zoom as an exception here, but most of them, have been focused on the internal collaboration needs, right? Company working within itself. And somehow with video meetings starting to rise between companies, now they're looking outside. How can I enable external collaboration, right? With customers or with partnerships. And this is a huge trend in B2B, right? Companies helping each other out, being successful. But if you look at the B2C market, right, you don't have video calls with your B2C customers, right? So, but there's kind of this back and forth where we're building at Broadvoice, we're building a UCaaS platform that now has a mix of both, right? We serve the internal collaboration needs, but we also serve the external support for those customers. And things are getting mixed up. I don't think anyone has a clear product vision at this point for this that can do the whole scope. What we found is that when we mix, we kind of, we think that we need two contact center solutions, one for large contact centers and one just contact center light. Because if we come in with a lot of software to a smaller contact center, they don't like that, right? And the other way around is also true, right? So I think there's, to sum this up, I think there's a lot of products being mixed and not a clear vision of what's the future going to be like, right? We're all just fumbling to make sure we check all the boxes on all deals. I think that's it.
No, that's a very good point. I think raising the point around the different buyer personas, in that with SMB, yes, it's VoIP. I mean, yes, DID department, but we go UC and we talk about all these magical capabilities. But when you look at what most enterprises are deploying, it's very straightforward. Yes, it includes collaboration now, but and it is a particular buyer. But in a small medium company, generally budget is an issue, and also people tend to talk a little bit more within each other. So I think within small medium sort of businesses, I see, in the accounts that I've seen recently, selecting sort of a converged offer, it's, because there's overall cost savings, one throat to choke, and the two different departments, so the business group, was talking to the VoIP group, and then they realized, well, we're talking to the same company, so why don't we, double it up and, get a discount. So that's small medium. When I'm looking at the large enterprises, there it's a different, the two different groups, two different egos, two different budgets that will never be reconciled because it's a big business. That company, say the it could be the sales organization, it could be the support organization. They have a budget of $5 million, and they're going to spend that $5 million budget, and they don't want anybody else interfering with their $5 million budget. So when I look at the challenges that like Five9 and Zoom had, I think that represents they're chasing after the elephants, the big organizations. When you're further down, then I'm seeing a little bit more sort of demand from the the customer, simply because, wow, you can save us some money. But combining up these two different purchases, that's just my perspective. But anyway, moving on, I don't want to occupy this. So, Thomas, you've worked this side of the business for quite a while now. What do you see as the customer demand for bringing UC and contact center together?
Well, I see it actually being inside out.
Okay, cool.
As we've talked about before, and I'll mention here again, I think the fundamental problem with communications today is it doesn't match reality.
Yeah.
Okay, we're talking about systems which are built that would have worked well 20 years ago, except that 20 years ago we only had landlines and not smartphones. Okay, so we should focus on that for a quick second, right? And what I think is happening, and this might be controversial, but I think there's a customer demand to reduce their pain for communications.
Yeah.
Right. If you look at how painful it is to communicate with a company, I mean, it's up there with dentists, right?
Yep.
So this has not changed.
Yeah.
And so we need to solve that problem. And the problem is that if you were to think, okay, that's the problem we have to solve, what tools do we have to solve it with? What else do we have?
Gotcha.
Okay. And so we have to use these tools to solve that problem. And unfortunately, from my perspective, these tools are really built for a world that is disappearing.
Yeah.
And so the customer demand has to be serviced in some way, but what else can we do except to use the tools that we have, and those tools that we have in general are inappropriate. So cool. That's my take on it.
No, that's a very good point in terms of the shift we're seeing. Well, I mean, the fundamental point you're raising is the pain of communications.
Yes,
and the systems we've got are built on that legacy voice assumption, rather than the fact that we have a device with text, video, internet.
Yeah. Right. Well, they're actually built on one of two assumptions, both being wrong. The first is that people are standing in your kitchen making phone calls from landlines, and they generally don't.
Yeah.
And the other assumption is that if you have a mobility strategy, it's fulfilled by a mobile app, and people don't install that either.
Yes. Good point.
Okay, so no great solution for the actual pain. And that's why CX is actually, I think, a thing now, because people are just so sick of being hurt. So that's
excellent point. Thank you, Thomas. Shai, what's your view around customer demand for this consolidation?
Well, I guess I would start by questioning the premise around this consolidation a little bit. And I think you hit on it quite well, that there's kind of three regimes. So we're talking about the overlap of UC and contact center, right? That's kind of the original question. Okay, so, you want to imagine it as some kind of Venn diagram, but it's better to just divide things into three chunks by customer size, because at the small end, small companies don't have call centers. So that's dominated by the UC world. At the large end, as you mentioned, totally different organizations. A Fortune 500 company really has different groups dealing with this stuff, and for good reason. Yeah. Because they are very different technical challenges when you're at that scale.
Yeah.
And then there's the mid region where, in some cases, it makes sense to buy them together.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, Alan, you've seen cases where people are buying from the same vendor, one throat to choke. I've seen that too, but I've also seen people buy them separately still.
Yeah.
I've seen. I mean, really, with deals I'm on, when I can have visibility into a deal, I'm seeing kind of all over the map arrangements. IVR from this vendor, but UC and call center from this vendor, or it's contact center. It's all one vendor, but there might be a reseller or an integrator, someone that's got a long term. Might be an IBM who's then buying Genesys for contact center and BroadSoft for UC. So I see that too, and sometimes I see, UC at the headquarters and contact centers all integrated, but the UC for the branch offices and other bits and pieces are still done by the. So I don't think there's something as simple going on as just a consolidation, and one day these two things will merge into one thing.
Yeah.
I mean, they really address, and João sent this very well, two different questions. It's internal collaboration versus external.
Yeah.
And it's tempting to fold them together because they end up using a lot of the same technical pieces. Yeah. And, for some market segments, they can be sold together. Yeah. But that difference, they have a different mission, and that's never going to change.
Exactly. No, that's a very good point. And I like the structure of the market that you're describing in terms of large. it's likely to remain separate. Then the sort of mid is where we're seeing that mid-market is where we're seeing that overlap between UC and contact center. But again, it's complex. Enterprise buying is complex.
It is very complex. They don't have an easy job. We all like to be the heroes of our own story. So we picture ourselves, the vendors as being the good guys. Why won't these people just see the wisdom in buying my product? But if you put yourself in their shoes, they have an enormous challenge of sorting through all the messaging from companies like the UC space and the call center space and the CPaaS space. All have a lot of overlap in their messaging, and vocabulary has gotten really messy in this space. There's a whole bunch of words where you put this word up and it could mean any number of, I'm not going to name one because then we'll go off into a whole tangent.
Omni-channel.
Right? There's a number of them that are just total sand traps in terms of meaning, right?
Yes.
So as a buyer, if I were a guy running a large contact center and you put me in charge of like revamping all the stuff and revamping UC, that is a tough job. Yeah. That is, I don't want that job. I like my job.
Excellent. Thanks, Shai. Adnan or Al, anything you'd like to add to this discussion?
Yeah, just a quick note. I think that part of the thing, some of the earlier speakers kind of hit that point as well, that I think ease of development. I think the technology is there, but the ease of development and deployment for mobile first, I kind of don't quite see it there yet. Yeah. And I think you said earlier as well, that the complexity, we as vendors think that, well, our solution fits all, but as soon as you take it from the customer's perspective, then you kind of realize that, well, it's not just the one piece of solution. It has to really fit into all of their business needs and their CRM systems and their customer management profiles. And then changes that need to come along, they need to be very quickly adapted. So I think that in general, I think the whole ease of development is getting there, but I don't think it's there yet that a small SMB can go and very easily go and pull. They can pull one maybe IVR piece of it out, but how do you integrate the entire thing? Then you need to get somebody bigger involved in it, and that kind of puts the entire thing into a longer cycle again and a more complex cycle.
Exactly, and then potentially pushes the price points outside of what a SMB could afford. Yeah, so I think it all comes back to the comment that João made right at the start: is we're fumbling away along. We're trying to discover in this complex market what's the right mix. So I'm going to move on to technology because we focused on what's customer need. So I'm sort of jumping around the questions a little bit, but we've mentioned this already in terms of bringing UCaaS, CCaaS are based around a sort of common platform. I'm interested in people's perspectives on what are the pros and cons in trying to, from a technology perspective, in bringing these two platforms together. And again, I'm going to pick on João because he was supposed to be presenting here, so I'm going to make sure we get as much time from him as possible.
Sorry about that. Telecommunications technology is, has been most of my professional life up so far, and you do get some benefits of having. I see this as a way, coming from the contact center space where scale and stability of the infrastructure is, one of the most important requirements you can focus on. There's a lot of learnings being done at a very high scale of, calls per second or current calls, whatever, just having flat out all calls being recorded, all of that, that helps moving into the UC world. Where usually the scaling of the technology is not that important. Usually you just add more boxes, right, and go on with your life. But the truth is that there's a hidden there's a hidden cost moving forward with scaling a company that is now the cost of computing, whether it's your own data center or cloud computing, is just going through the roof. So having that knowledge has definitely helped to keep a very strong strategy around cost mitigation, around the technology itself. Also recently, we've seen that there's a lot of security threats around telecommunications.
Yes.
This has been a tough year for telecom around security. Seems like all of the hackers woke up and said, look, maybe we should hit those guys, right? And so there's a lot of learnings to be done there as well. But and I'm trying, I don't know if you're noticing, but I'm trying to come up with an explanation on where it makes sense. Because in the end of the day, we go back to product and use case. And it's two different worlds, right? When I started looking at UC a couple of months ago, more seriously again, I find out that people are still using presence, right?
Yes.
It's something that in the contact center world, there's no one speaks about presence at all. Presence on the telephony layer doesn't exist for a couple of years now because moved on to other channels. So you have to move one layer up for that, right? You need to integrate web chat and email with telephony. So presence is now one level up, right? And I look at UC and there's still presence there, right? People are still doing presence and fax. I found out we have a lot of fax users, and so it kind of we know this stuff exists, but it's two different worlds from a use case perspective, right? I can give you a very techy example. The way we set up our contact center platform basically uses the telecom stack as a giant API, right? So there's no, we don't have any business logic inside the telephony stack, right? While on the UC stack is very, very common to take advantage of, media gateways doing, call queues and IVRs and all of that, right? Yeah. So, and that's what you get with traditional unified communications is that the media server actually determines the capability of the system, right? Yes. And contact centers just use media servers to, do media. That's it, right? And that actually tells you a lot of how the technology is being used on those two very different use cases. It kind of looks like the same, we throw names around and they sound like the same, but in the end of the day, it's not the same thing.
No, that's great. I think that, bringing the learnings from contact center in terms of scale, stability, definitely. And the approach in terms of, what, is the processing impact. Something as simple as speech to text in a contact center can have a major cost item. While within UC, just throw another server in. It's like, it's a great function. Let's put it everywhere. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's a cost here. And security, absolutely. We've covered that at TADSummit. We had from Sandro Gauci, we had a great presentation, and we'll have tomorrow from David Kaysen from Telnix, one of the many companies that have been hit. And people focus on the last 2 months. Well, through this year, many companies in the cloud communication space have been hit. Now, the thing that I really found insightful was within UC, it's all about the functionality of the media gateway. But from the contact center side, it's the layer above. That's where you start applying that. So that leads me to then sort of look towards our Radisys colleagues here and interested in your perspective. Because you're providing a lot of the technology pieces for both UC and contact center in terms of the benefits that can accrue from a technology perspective on merging UC and contact center.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. Maybe I'll start. And João was talking about it there. There's a lot of commonality in terms of capabilities on the media side between UC and customer contact center, customer care solutions. Our perspective, our customer is the supplier to the end customer typically with our media processing platform. And one of the things we're seeing now, historically, the commonality has been around some base, voice and mostly telephony functionality for prompting, recording, DTMF detection. But the complexities evolved over time. Video may be sort of the tip of the iceberg, but it's still adds a lot of complexity and requires significant resources and costs to process. Then you factor in the need to telephony becomes web, becomes mobile OTT access as well. Finally, and most significantly, I think from what we're seeing in the market now, the ability to gain more insights from the media processing as well for analytics, real time and post interaction analytics is really critical. So now there's a significant multiplier in terms of the investment required to support this functionality, this common functionality. Maybe there's more emphasis on certain capabilities, depending on which side of the fence, which solution we're talking about here, UC or contact center. But I think a lot of what's driving the some of these investments as well is on the cost savings and those synergies. One last dimension I'll kind of highlight. It really depends. Some solutions are purely public cloud-based, but we have a lot of customers who are looking at having multiple cloud implementations, private and public, on-premise, so the distributed solutions as well. So the R&D investment required is pretty substantial.
Yeah, that's a good point on the heterogeneity of the deployments. Adnan?
Yeah, just to quickly maybe add to, I think what I think Al had already kind of touched on is that, and I think one of the earlier speakers as well, that the solution will be limited to, or maybe perhaps as good as what the underlying media server capabilities are. I mean, in the past, it's been basic voice and messaging, basic telephony kind of capabilities. But as things are getting more and more technically advanced and commonly available, like I'll give you some examples: AI, machine learning. I think somebody mentioned speech to text, text transcription. Some of these machine learning models that Al touched up on the analytics aspect of it. The biometric authentication of users in an easy way, of course, security and privacy concerns, as part of that. So there's many of these, from audio, video, speech analytics, AI, machine learning technologies that are coming to the forefront now, but they're complex things. I think an application developer can't just go say, well, this is there, but is it there from an ease of use from a developer's perspective? I think that's kind of where some of our focus has been quite a while. I think maybe the next session, maybe you'll see some examples of that.
Yeah.
But it's including those things, but including them as part of the solution that are very easily consumable through a set of, the standard APIs, SDKs. And of course, we mentioned got to be omni-channel. It's not restricted to mobile applications, WebRTC, for instance, and basic telephony thing. If I just use a standard PST and telephony phone, will all those services still be available to me or not? Right? So it's taking those complex media analytics, we call that in general. I know it's a larger bucket of things, but make them easily accessible to the developer community so that those new advanced applications can be created more quickly and rapidly deployed, as things were in the past, which is basic voice and messaging.
Yeah, no, got it. And then, just wrapping up on the sort of pros and cons from a sort of technology perspective, Shai, Thomas, anything you'd like to add there?
Well, I guess just on the topic of, UC and call center, I think it's interesting. I just watched the Twilio annual event, Signal, I think it's called.
That's it.
And it's very interesting because if you had asked me a few years ago, I would have bet that Twilio would have moved into the UC area. And they have not. No. They have made very big acquisitions in other directions. They bought a giant email provider. They bought the consumer data thing. They are moving towards, stronger in contact center, stronger in customer engagement, and away from UC. And it makes me wonder, they're smart guys.
Oh, yeah.
It makes me wonder what they're seeing that made them say, with all of all the cards they had in their hand that said, go towards UC, they said, that's not the area we want to pursue. And I think what I read that as is that my interpretation of that is that they see the biggest growth and the biggest opportunity for them is in things related to the customer engagement. Yes. All the things around that is where they are headed. Now, that's just one data point, and they might be making the wrong move. But that was very notable to me in this year's event.
No, that's an excellent point. Thomas?
Yeah, and I think Shai's right about that. I think it is really interesting that they've made these decisions. And so, we're TADHack, right? We're programmable communications. We put together solutions and stuff. And I just want to point out that one of the things that we think we know intrinsically, which is missed in UC and missed in contact center generally, is who actually builds the solution. So you could imagine UC offers as we put it together for you, use it.
Mm-hmm.
And Twilio being the exact opposite.
Yes.
Here are the pieces and parts, build it.
Yes.
Right? And I think one of the things which we're seeing out of Twilio is that the components which we'd like to build with are probably still a little bit too low level to be able to efficiently create the solutions that enterprises need.
Yeah.
So there's somewhere in between the built up and the piece parts that are a little more Lego-ish that we can plug in a little bit better and maybe best. We haven't quite gotten there yet. And I think that's actually going to be the enabler that's going to make it really efficient and start answering some of these. It's expensive. How do we do that? We need to be more efficient.
Yeah, no, because I think that the term that was used is in insights. There's insights is very important in terms of customer experience, and I think the question around how can those insights and the ability to gain those insights be applied around all our employee communications, and that generally hasn't. Of course, as sort of Shai mentioned, for Twilio, their focus is on all the workflows associated with customers. Full stop. From the communications all the way through to like email marketing, to integration with e-commerce. So when your basket is full, you get a message on your preferred messaging platform that basically says, "Hey, you haven't closed. Basically bought all the stuff in there." And it's that integration across all the different workflows, across all the different verticals that you see is a focus of Twilio. And and to what Dean said, because we said the word unified, and that gets him very angry. It's disunified, and it is, because it's a whole set of piece parts that, and every business is different. It's like my wife works across a number of different businesses. A small business that's focused on construction has exceptionally different communication needs across the partners than, say, a large multinational organization, which has all its different silos. And being able to build the solutions to each business's need, has significant business benefit for them, because they're not getting a ton of crap thrown at them that they never use.
Yeah, that's right. And just match it against what we used to have.
Yes.
Every single business had the same phone system. Every single person has the same smartphone. There is no differentiation at that level.
Yes.
But now we're saying, look at all the stuff we can do if we could differentiate.
Exactly.
And we don't have the DNA of it because we're used to having one solution, which is why we're so big. Why is our industry so big? Because there's one solution for the entire planet.
Exactly.
So a million solutions, right?
Yeah. And then just to wrap out on, again, for tomorrow on the keynote session, we have Thomas will be presenting on vCons, which is an open standard for conversations. And I think that's again one of the building blocks that I think will be important in helping create better insights, not just around customer experience, but also around employee communications. So I'm just looking at the time here. Let's hop to the last question. Video, has become important over the past. Well, video has always been there. We've used video conferencing for years, but as always, it's now distributed far more broadly. Many more people are using video for employee collaboration, less so in terms of customer communication. So the question to the panel is video going to make the leap from into mainstream customer communications anytime soon? We've got somebody who needs to mute, do we? No? Okay, looks like we're good.
Is it me?
I think it might be you, Joe.
Oh my God. Let me change my microphone. Just a second.
No problem.
What about now? Is
Yeah.
okay? No?
Yeah, it's good. You're good.
Yeah. Now I can't
you're
hear
perfect.
you.
Oh, you can't hear me. Oh, I'm sorry.
Just a second.
No problem.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, you're coming through loud and clear.
I can hear you.
Oh. Tell you what, while João sorts out his, which mic and speak he's using. So the question is, is video going to make the leap to mainstream customer communication anytime soon? I'm going to pick on Al and add. Oh, you're back. Okay.
Yes.
Go for it, João.
Okay, so refresh on WebRTC usually fixes problems. So that's something that is very hard to do on a hard phone, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so video. I've been through this question a lot because product teams tend to push features. Usually they push features down the customer's throat, and also down the engineering's throat, right? So we need to be selective. And, it goes down to the basic question that what are companies doing when they're servicing their customers, right? And if you go down to, the biggest scaling contacts across the world is business to consumer, right? You think of a big utility company or telco, wherever it is, it's, that's where you get the sheer volume of communication happening. And that's, based on the nature of the services they provide and the type of support that customers need, it's very, synchronous. So phone calls is still the number one because, people, if your cable is off or if you don't have power in your home or water is missing, whatever it is, you get on the phone, right? You don't send an email, you get on the phone. So it's synchronous. And it's very transactional, right? It's like almost binary, right?
Yes.
I have a problem, fix it now, right? And if you move this, if you have the same line of thought and you move this into a business-to-business space, usually what you get is a bunch of asynchronous interactions, like I email you, you email me, back and forth, etc. And then eventually we end up in a meeting, right? A call. Right. And now this is where video comes in. But I think the point is that businesses are trying to establish partnerships to help each other be successful, while business to consumer communication is mostly, a demand for fixing something. Right. So there's I don't have a need to establish, this relationship with you. Right. And video, in my perspective, is an enabler of relationship within a communication flow, let's say, okay? And that's why we do video with your friends and your family. That's why we do video with them and don't do video with strangers, right? With strangers, we do a phone call and not video, right? And, it would be easy to do a video call as it is to do a phone call, but there's a relationship aspect to this. That's why I need you to email me 3 times before I accept to do a video meeting with you, right? And once we get, and this is like a perception on the psychology of communication. Once we get this, we kind of enable where video in the long term is going to make a lot of sense, right? Having said this, there are specific use cases, even in mass market, like we're seeing a lot of attempts by big companies, usually utilities, to use augmented reality, on a service level, right? So just point your phone to, let's say you have a router from a cable company in your company on your home, right? Just point your camera to that router, and we're going to do a diagnosis using augmented reality, right? So this is becoming, I won't say mainstream, but this is becoming more and more often. And that's a workflow where it actually starts with a video call, right? Sometimes it depends on how you implement it, but it can start with a video call. And once again, if you would compare it to the normal workflow, is a technical guy goes to your home, knocks on the door, he presents himself. So you're establishing a trust relationship right there, right? And so that's funny because Now video makes sense as well, because somehow that person is looking into your house, right, into your home, and that needs like a basis of relationship to happen as well, because you're opening up your home to this person that is on the other side. So I look at video as an enabler for that, next level of relationship between companies and their consumers. So if you ask me personally, is video going to be mainstream as from a number of contacts per year volume wise? I don't think so, but it does make a lot of sense in a lot of use cases.
Yeah, and I think I'll just point to our friends at Dialpad, where for them, video is part of the sales enablement process, because there is an escalation of the conversation to the point where trust becomes an important component, and bringing in video enables the salesperson to close that deal, whether it's signing up to a university course or signing up to an insurance policy or something like that. So I think you're right. It's all about different use cases. So again, I'll point to the video guys, Al and Adnan. You're doing a lot of stuff in the video space. So I'm interested from your perspective, when's video going to be mainstream in customer communications?
So I guess you could argue it is depending on the context, just like João was talking about the different applications or use cases where it makes sense. I mean, video in some cases is very intrusive, and that's why sort of the trust and having a relationship and being comfortable, depending on that context, is important. But we're seeing there are applications where the traditional mediums of voice and text only aren't going to serve. João was talking about customer support troubleshooting, but there's also how do I fix something? How do I use a product? And people are if the customer interaction systems that enterprises or businesses employ aren't using video, customers are finding other ways to source videos to help them. They're using YouTube for how to or to make purchase decisions on products, and YouTube is there's a lot of noise there. Businesses don't have the ability to control the message, to control the placement, how their product is used. So there are a lot of it is already mainstream if you look at it from that context. Like how-to videos are typically the second or third most common videos that are viewed on YouTube, for example. There are other benefits to video. You see a lot of studies where people will talk about how video has helped them make purchase decisions. Video can sometimes help lower inhibitions for what people will communicate, on more complex subjects like financial topic or benefits. We see a lot of interest in HR departments employing video for communication and even automated interactions. So I guess we would argue that it's mainstream for the applications where it makes sense, and it's really incumbent on businesses to get on that bandwagon, or else somebody else is going to do it for them. And I think that YouTube is a great example of that.
Absolutely. And the misinformation on YouTube, it's like I was looking for laying Belgian blocks for a particular problem I've got, and the top 2 or 3 were just wrong, because they're just popular, and you just realize, now, that's not a direct analogy, but YouTube, in many topics really doesn't do a lot of products any good. Yet, I think, being able to have, from a particular, you're interested in a particular project, drainage system, they just should have the videos there. Like even Home Depot has got its head around it needs videos there. But of course, it's just for a niche of particular products. Yeah, I think that it does need far more time. I mean, the problem is, of course, the cost in producing those videos. Everybody thinks we need professionals. No, you don't. You could do things very cheaply indeed, because you just need somebody who knows and then can present it in a semi-coherent way. But anyway, I'm sorry, I'm going off there. So because of time, just quickly from Shai or Thomas, your views around video and customer communication.
Well, I will be a little bit contrarian. in terms of video in the contact center. And when I say that, I'm excluding the this idea of YouTube videos or on-demand videos. Put that aside.
Yep.
Put aside, take a photo and upload it to the agent. That's a separate thing.
Yep.
Put aside internal community. Just contact center with video. On that front, I'm not really seeing any appetite from call centers. One of the biggest problems call centers are fighting right now is the work from home situation really stretches the bandwidth problem for them. They're having a lot of trouble having consistent, reliable audio to all their agents that they sent to go work from home because of the pandemic. In fact, one of your sponsors, Alan, Subspace, is focused on exactly this problem, like optimizing the IP transit, the IP route to help minimize the. So that's the last thing those guys want to do is say, oh, let's add high bandwidth video to our at-home agents. Now, look, that's transient. It'll be fixed, and people will be back in the call center. And I guess you could say the agents we want on video will have to have on premise, and the work from home agents will keep them off the video. But you're adding another layer of complexity here. And I guess what it boils down to me is, I don't see call centers with an appetite for this in the classic sense of doing a video call center interaction. And I think the reasons for that is that the costs just outweigh the benefits. So I mean, let's talk about cost. Number one, you've got this bandwidth problem, especially with work from home agents, which I just mentioned. Number two, you've got the problem that if there's any problem with the video, if the consumer is having difficulty and the mic's not working or the video is choppy, it's just another problem you've added to a transaction that you don't need any other wrinkles. Like the last thing you want to do is be troubleshooting someone's video who's just a consumer, and that was separate from the problem So, and then number three, you introduce all the issues around what should the agents look like and how should their hair be and all the other, let's just call them HR issues around having your agents on screen. And then on top of that, remember the call center traffic is often very spiky, right? Like some call centers just get walloped on Monday morning, and then by Monday at 2, it's all over. And the rest of the week, that's the last thing you want for a high bandwidth. And then especially when you've got some kind of big rush to the call center, product recall or, there's a pandemic and everybody's. So in a lot of ways, it's just counter to, it just, it doesn't, it runs against the grain to do this for call centers. And I think they look at all of that and then they say, okay, well, what is the upside here? Our customers, in terms of a classic, I'm not talking about, talking to your financial advisor about I'm talking about your classic, simplistic 2-minute, 3-minute call center interaction. I think call centers look at that and say the costs are really high and the benefits we're going to get from that are probably not there. Exactly. And I don't have a dog in this fight either way. I'm just telling you the appetite I see, and probably these are the reasons behind it. Yeah,
for those specific use cases, absolutely. And then Thomas?
Yeah, so I'll be contrarian, but in another dimension. So basically, in the world, there are two ways of communicating: the way you do with your friends, the way you do with a company. And with your friends, you communicate in one way, and when you communicate with the company, it's a very different way entirely. They ask for your social security number sometimes, right? It's just a crazy different conversation. My kids very often start a video call with me. That's how I know they're my friends. Will a business ever do that? Well, when they decide that they want to have a relationship with me like I have a relationship with my friends, they will. And, I've been texting my friends forever. My businesses still don't text me well enough. So once they get that one down, maybe they'll get to the video. But I think that's why. I think they care more about themselves than their customers. And that's why they're doing it, because they don't care how they sound or look.
No, that's an excellent point. So we're coming up on time for this panel session. So again, I'd just like to thank João, Shai, Adnan, Al, Thomas for your time for this panel discussion. I think I'm going to be producing a summary of it. I think we covered some excellent points. It was, for me, really insightful, and I think clarifies where where that merge between contact center and unified communication makes sense, and some of the dimensions or use cases, let's put it more simply, that it can make sense. So again, thank you so much, guys. We're now going